Father, Mother, God, as we prepare our hearts and minds to receive the love and messages offered in this service today, with the joy of God in our hearts, we give thanks for the fullness of life. Our thoughts are uplifted and in tune with Spirit. Good moves through us as a nourishing river of gladness and thanksgiving. For family, friends, and this place we call our spiritual home, our gratitude comes from overflowing hearts. We are assured of divine love and are blessed with peace, guidance, health, and abundance. And so it is. Amen. And now, once again, special music with Barbara.
Barbara, you have such a way with that, that even though we're, I don't know how many miles apart, I hear you like we're right in the church together the way we always used to be. I can feel it in my heart and in my bones, just like before. That's amazing. Thank you. And I'm sort of embarrassed because I should remember that song, but I don't. But I can tell you, as a prelude, so to speak, to what we're about to discuss, that it hits all the notes. It's heart, it's soul, it's intensity, it's pain, and it's triumph. And we got all that today. And what also is amazing is somehow it always happens that either the daily word or the prayer or something basically said in 2 minutes what I'm going to spend the next 15 saying. So I think that our daily word said it even better today. So let's hang with that daily word because that was a good one. It's beautiful to be here. I'm so grateful and so, I don't know, just so happy. We're doing something a little different today, and you might have guessed by the title. Practice for weird times. I think it's a safe guess that we all probably agree it's weird times. I think we're probably all in a place where we have felt turbulence or felt stuff coming up. Maybe we're more reactive than we normally are. Maybe we're not totally 100% charitable and accepting and angelic. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to focus on practices, partly because we are, of course, practical Christianity as unity, and because since we're in a space of, I think, being called or being invited individually and collectively to move into something different, we'll get to show up a little bit differently as well. So just to try something different on, it's just an offer. We're gonna play with some Buddhist practices today. I've been doing a lot of Vajrayana training the past year or so, especially a really intensive program the past few weeks in the Mindraling lineage with Jetsun Khandro Rinpoche, who is an unusual person in that she's a she and a lineage holder in the Tibetan tradition who's a woman is not common. So it's especially wonderful to be studying with her. Also doing a program with Shambhala right now where we're reading a really lovely text by Thich Nhat Hanh and going back to one of my dog-eared, massively underlined favorites of the places that scare you by Pema Chodron. I actually won't be using many quotes from her today because I can't pull single things out of her writing. I would end up just basically reading her whole book. So that would be kind of dull because you can do that on your own. But I want to really emphasize that the inspiration for this and most of what we're playing with is coming from her. We're going to do two practices. I think I may pull one of them out, but I don't think so. I think we're going to do two practices. It'll be about 12 minutes at the end. You may recognize the names of them or even the practices of them. I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, to come with beginner's mind, to be like a child, as I think Andy spoke about a week or two ago, right? A couple of weeks ago. So to bring our childlike spirit. I think that's all I want to say to start, but to be open, I want to really be clear. I'm not positing these as a replacement to anything that we do at Unity. And they feel so resonant with all that we do. And it's a different, it's the elephant, right? And we've got our hands on different parts of the elephant, and it's a different part of the elephant, and I offer it for exploration. The first thing I really, and this struck me, I came to unity from Vedanta. So not from Buddhism, but from another Eastern tradition, which was like the parent of Buddhism, I guess. And I always was struck by things that struck me as so similar. So we're going to play a quick little game. Actually, probably no one will find this funny except me. Whose line is that? Who remembers whose line is that? Are you guys too young? I remember it. Okay, whose line is that? Okay, so here's the quote. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make our world. Tick tock, tick tock. I won't do that. So here's the funny thing, right? That sounds like a New Thought writer, doesn't it? Yeah, that's Gautama Buddha, right? That's him. So you could probably make a case that he was the original New Thought thinker. So he also said, whatever suffering arises has a reaction as its cause. If all reactions cease to be, then there's no more suffering. Also completely consistent with our understanding of universal law and how things operate. So I want to mention a few similarities, right? I could go on forever, but I'm just going to mention a few. So first, they're practical. Tibetan Buddhism, totally practical. There are other branches that are a little less so, but it's called the lightning path, right? They have this idea that if you really apply yourself, you can get off the wheel of reincarnation in one lifetime, which is a pretty remarkable idea. So they documented everything. They made everything super scientific, right? The Tibetan Book of the Dead, everything is about how do we prepare? What do we do if I put my eyes like for this versus like this? What's different? They've documented all of this. It's a very deep study. So they're very practical, like Unity is. They venerate teachers who've shown the path of realization, right? Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ. So it's not even worshiping the person, it's venerating the person who shows us the path. Aspiring because we know that we can become that ourselves. Both systems are actually not so much about beliefs, but about training, particularly training the mind to discern truth from not truth, to think, quote, right thoughts from a Buddhist perspective, to express our Buddha nature or our inherent goodness, our inherent godlike nature, to act with loving kindness or compassion because we all are one. There's no savior. There's no God as a vending machine who gives us stuff. There's nothing out there. It is all within us. And what we experience is an out projection of our own being and our own thought. We get to love our enemies. We get to cherish all beings. Universal law of cause and effect, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. I had 2 pages at one point, but then I tried to condense it for you. But to say the two, while of course different in many ways, like with so much of perennial wisdom, which I guess really is the definition of perennial wisdom, they meet, they converge. And it's funny because I was pulling some of the unity side of this together. The Buddhism side was all right up front for me, but the uni side I got to pull together. I actually came across a fascinating man, Robert, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Brumet, who Kay Wood, you spoke about his book, Finding Yourself in Transition recently as well. So I thought, oh, how fun. But he is also a Buddhist teacher. And I found it interesting because he had convergent ministries, parallel ministries in Unity and as a mindfulness ministry sort of under the umbrella of Unity, but he never really intertwined them, more so that I can't find from his writings that he really fully intertwined them, which I actually think would be a fantastic project to do because they're like a nice weave, I think. So I wanted to mention that. Also, it's interesting. I found examples from the first, oh heavens, now I'm forgetting the name of it. The Fillmore's first publication. And there were Buddhist writings in it. So already at the very, very beginning, they had Eastern teachings involved. So, okay, so fine, there's a history, we have a lineage even within unity of actually even specifically Tibetan Buddhism. So why do we want to bring in Buddhist practice right now? Why would we be looking at this? As our fifth principle says, we get to not just know a truth, but we get to put our feet to prayers, we get to implement it, we get to act on what we know. And the Tibetans loved this also. They've been working at it for 2,500 years, and they put their feet to it constantly. We seem to be hearing from all quarters, or I am, I'm sure, I imagine others are too. I'm hearing from teachers and from students and from clients, and just the cacophony of the world that there's no time to dawdle. We get to wake up now. We get to engage now. We get to recognize ourselves and recognize one another now. I like bringing in a different practice because even though what we do is awesome, there's a little piece of what got us here may not get us there. Not that one is better, but if I've been doing one thing, it's time for me to maybe shake it up and do something different, right? And someone else maybe gets to shake it up and do what I've been doing. So there's a space for something new and a little fresh energy, a little something that shakes up the places where we are comfortable, right? Comfort is not our friend when we're seeking to grow. So the goals of these practices are to free ourselves bit by bit of the bounds within which we hold ourselves, mostly from fear, from wanting to self-protect, and from the discomfort of uncertainty. Also to clear and to gain a greater mastery or more choice with our thoughts, with our mind, and with what we're creating. And to decondition, right? People are using the term decolonize. So there's a little bit of maybe that energy to it, but deconditioning our minds, loosening the grip of ego or the mind of separation, and to help our system remember. To remember and to express our wholeness, our perfection, and our oneness. So let me say just a second why specifically these practices. One, and this is sort of a strange thought, but I'm going to ask you to stick with me. Both we at Unity and the Buddhists put a lot of emphasis on thought, on monitoring the thought, being aware of thought, and on the impact of thought. So we have an opportunity with these exercises we're going to introduce today to actually intervene before thought. So it's sort of a pre-thought engagement to dislodge or to decondition. I'm going to read a quote now. We put a lot of emphasis on avoiding or correcting a negative thought. But what if we could get in there before the negative thought even happened? What is a thought except a reaction to some pre-thought stimulus? What prompts that thought? We experience a sensation, which might be physical or mental. If we react to it with liking or disliking, with craving, attachment, or aversion, this is an action. In this case, a mental action in the form of an unconscious reaction to some input. The result is pain, suffering, or distress. If, however, we unhook from the root of the reactivity and simply allow ourselves to be dispassionately, neutrally aware of the sensation, there's no cause to produce any pain, suffering, or distress. In other words, no reaction, no cause, no effect. Make sense? I know that's a little twisty, but it's kind of cool, isn't it? Right? So with these practices, we go to the place before thought, we discharge, we unhook the place from which we would react in the first place. No cause, no effect. Okay, I was kind of geeking out on that. Second is the idea that to help ourselves, we get to help another. To help another, we get to help ourselves. These practices, as we'll mention again, create this self-reinforcing loop and a perpetually expanding circle of care and circle of spiritual engagement. Okay, so the first practice we're going to look at, first idea and then practice, is loving kindness, which I'm sure everybody has heard of and probably most of us have done. But I'm going to ask us to look at it fresh, and we're going to bring a somewhat slightly different perspective to it today. So I'm actually going to come at this from the Christian Bible first, which may seem weird. So Matthew 5:43, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I will tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain to the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And not even the tax, are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your people, what are you doing more than others? Don't even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So I came across this again recently and just was blown away at the metaphysics of it, right? The metaphor of it, the layers with which we can understand this and interpret this. We could spend a long time with it. I know you get it. You can continue to play with it. But here are the couple points that I want to make is the idea of duality, which we see throughout this. Your enemy, your neighbor, yourself, the hate, the love, the evil, the good, the righteous, the unrighteous. And all of these, the sun is not shined, but is shining upon them by God. The rains reach their fields regardless. So what we're being shown is to hold duality, to embrace it, to bring everything into the fold, into the space of the Father, quote unquote, love and acceptance. Even the enemy within. So unity teaches us that we're inherently good and whole, but how many of us really at our core believes it and lives from it? I don't, probably most of us don't, or we wouldn't still be sitting here. One of the things that struck me was the Dalai Lama, it could have been Thich Nhat Hanh, but I think it was the Dalai Lama, was amazed when he first came to the West that people didn't love themselves. It's just an inherent piece of the Eastern teachings. They didn't come from an idea of original sin, but rather original goodness, original holiness is what we would call it. And while unity holds that idea, I think there's a backdrop, right? Like a Zoom backdrop or something, an overlay of more traditional Christianity and original sin. So while I might think this and feel like I know it, there's still that piece inside that believes there's something to fix, that there's a problem self, that there's something that's just not acceptable, a shadow aspect that should be destroyed, that I don't want to deal with these negative things inside of me. So I push those away. We all know how we do this, right? There are whole schools of philosophy and of psychology and everything around this. But if I just love the parts of me that others like, I'm only loving half of me, which isn't my wholeness. and isn't my godliness, it means I'm not expressing fully in the world or bringing my divinity forth. Also, if I'm pushing things away, what happens? That stuff runs my life because I'm in constant unconscious reactivity with it. So an interesting idea that our dualities aren't opposites so much as they are complements. They create the whole. They round the biggest picture out. They become the wholeness of what God has created in each of us. So we don't get whole unless we integrate everything. And there's a level, of course, where all of it is real, but on the level where we're living as personalities, they are real, and we will disarm them with an embrace and be much better off than if we invite them to a duel. So when we look at the practice of loving kindness, which we're going to do a brief version of it, it started more than 2,500 years ago as an antidote to fear. Not specifically for loving kindness, but loving kindness itself was an idea of what can we bring forth to cultivate the expression of our wholeness rather than the place to fall by default. There's a theory that Jesus in his teachings did much the same thing, but it's a fascinating theory, but I won't do this. I will stay on tact. So the idea of it is to liberate the heart, to cultivate love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, which are 4 key pillars, if you will, in Buddhism. When we practice the loving kindness meditation, we acknowledge that every one of us shares the same wish to be happy, the same vulnerability, the same fear of change, the same desire to not suffer. And we can shift the way we view ourselves and others through this kindness rather than through criticism. This is a comment from Sharon Salzberg. Buddha says that the intimacy and caring that fill our hearts as the force of loving kindness develops and will bring 10 advantages. I'm not going to go through them, but it's really fun. There are 10 key advantages, and Buddhist practitioners will memorize these 10 advantages and recite them and put them on sticky notes and things, because the idea is if I remember what these are and if they're at the tip of my tongue, then even when my practice feels like it's going nowhere and I just want to give up or go watch Netflix or something, I'll stick with it because I will be reminded that people will love me, that the devas and animals will love me, that I will be protected, that my face will be radiant, my mind will be serene. Those sound pretty good. So they keep us motivated. The Buddha also pointed out that if we practice metta, we will receive in return the love of others, but that's not the motivation. It's a recognition of the energy that we are putting out. The same teaching we have that like attracts like, that if we extend forces of love, we will be met with them in return. So interestingly, actually, loving kindness has become a very popular practice. And there are folks teaching it at Google, and a woman I know actually is teaching it at this big pharmaceutical company, a lot of other tech companies and things. And so actually it's being studied. So if you want to actually Google what Google's doing with loving kindness meditations, you can. And there's statistics on it and proof and numbers and everything, which is cool, but I don't know, it's not my thing. I just want the feeling. So anyway, interesting to know if you're that person. What's cool is that as our loving kindness muscles build, we start by really developing and solidifying the loving kindness for ourselves, right? Like the classic oxygen mask in the airplane sort of thing. And as we do that, not just accepting ourselves, but really sort of embracing all of ourselves, we ultimately begin including others. We widen our circle of kindness. We widen our circle of love and acceptance to include more and more beings. People we like, people we know and don't know, people maybe we find challenging, and broader spectrums of types of people or even types of beings. We'll see in our practice, we start with may I as an intention in the practice. And then may this person who I care deeply for, this person who I don't really know, but I wish them well, this person who, wow, they're really a pain in my back or neck or whatever. And then we put them all together, all these beings, myself, the person I love, the neutral person, the person I find a challenge, and then all beings everywhere. So the circle continues to expand. And what we're doing is expanding our hearts. These feel like mental practices in Buddhism, but these are very, very heart-centered activities. And not only the outreach, but the expanding of the muscle, right, of our own heart and its capacity to hold self and other. Also, as we deepen our experience of loving kindness, of metta, as the practice is called, we then move into a practice of compassion, which we're going to talk about next. So it's called Maitri, right? Compassion. And compassion is considered the primary quality that needs to be cultivated in Buddhist practice. It awakens compassion, dissolves the tightness that they talk about as having built up around our hearts. Teachers say, they always give you these carrots, I love it, that the effects lead to lasting happiness for oneself and for others, and that it's necessary for forgiveness, also of self and of others. So I know I'm talking a lot before we do the practice, and I know it's a dense topic. So I'm going to interject one little story here. The Shambhala tradition brings in a story to illustrate compassion, which is a mother bird and her little chicks, and how the mother bird cares for those chicks fully until they're big and strong enough to fly out of the nest on their own. And they paint this picture of the chicks squawking, and you know, they don't really have feathers yet. They're sort of matted and damp and bah, bah, right? They're really kind of ugly and kind of annoying. And then they ask the question, so who am I in this story? Am I the mother bird or am I the chick? And the answer, in a typical sort of Buddhist fashion, is I am both. I am the mother who is strong and caring and loving, without condition, without end, without question. And I am those chicks who feel helpless, who are screaming, who know how to get anything for themselves and are fully dependent on someone else. So we're both of these, and we get to hold the beauty of the mother who's altogether and wise, and the complete inanity and helpless and perceived ugliness of those little chicks. I'm both of those. And our compassion practice teaches us to sit with both, to hold both, without judgment, without pushing, without desire, without rejection, to simply be and to sit with both. So the idea of getting to stay with ourselves and getting to stay with what shows up and what is real is not always a fun place to me. It's easy, I think, especially, at least for me, I won't speak for anybody else. With unity, sometimes I can do a little bit of what maybe we'd call a spiritual bypass, where if I'm feeling really crummy or something really is coming up, to jump maybe a moment for me, maybe too soon, to an affirmation, to a place where it's comfortable, to a reminder of my godlike perfection, of my wholeness as one with the divine. Instead of sitting in that discomfort and recognizing the reality and the godness of even that discomfort. It's through awareness of that that I get to embrace it, to integrate it, that I feed that little molted chick. Actually, I'm looking at chick right now. That's not a good, it doesn't really fit. And that I get to help that become strong. I get to nourish it and help it become a loving, full, whole adult. So we sit with compassion practices, and we're going to talk specifically about a practice called Tonglen. And if you've done it before, we're not doing the full deal. We're just going to do a wee little safe taste of it. I don't want to say safe, but if you've done it, I just don't want you to get nervous about it. Tonglen embraces the part that feels icky. It actually goes into the pain, into the suffering that we feel or that another feels, in order to integrate it into myself, and in order to, the Buddhists don't say this, this is my picture, to do like an Indra's net, right? Among everyone on the globe or in the universe who is having that same pain. If I've lost a loved one, and this is a real one for me recently, there are millions of people in the world who have had that pain just now. And to sit with that in myself and that in the millions of other people creates a level and a depth of connection and of oneness and of love and of vulnerability, which is truth and authenticity, that cannot happen otherwise. It's the place of what Pema Chodron calls the soft underbelly, that really lets us be with another. So going into this, especially for people coming out of unity or new thought, this seems so counterintuitive, right? I rebelled. I thought, this is ridiculous. There's a better way to do this. But I trusted. And I'll tell you that my experience, and that of all the Tibetan Buddhists who've done this for 2,500 years, is that it works. So what we're doing is practicing a little discomfort now for great freedom and great comfort a little later. It means that we go in with our eyes open and experience our own suffering and pain, and usually that of others, but we're not really going to do that today. It seems to go against our natural default of wanting to feel good and to push away pain. But what it really does is dissolve the layers of self-protection we have tried to build around our heart. And it dissolves the fixation and the clinging we have to the ego. So like I said, it normally involves taking on the suffering of others, which is super powerful, but we're not doing that today. We're just going to take a feeling of our own and sit with it. Know that we're not alone in that feeling, and breathe with that. It brings us into a level, like I said, of compassion that we can't know otherwise. And we really begin, my own experience is that we begin to interact with people differently in our day-to-day lives after we have met them in pain, in the suffering that's universal to all of us. A really valuable point to understand, I forget where I got this idea, is that we're not indulging the negative by doing this. What we're actually doing is by presencing it fully, myself, and especially if I do this with another, I am emphatically denying that that pain or suffering or circumstance has any power over me. That it has any power to separate me from my source or from love or my knowing of my oneness. So in a roundabout, counterintuitive way, this aligns perfectly with our unity teachings and understandings. So Pema Chodron talks about how we access this place. I was going to spend more time on this, but I sort of don't want to right now. I feel like y'all are getting bored. But I wanted to say something about the soft spot. It is like our belly. It's like the place, like the animal protects its heart, right? And there's the place where we have done that. And with this, we can even use the visualization, the idea of that we're tapping into that. We're opening the box where we have it protected and stored and sealed away. And recognize that we involuntarily, it's instinctive, it's a reflex that we would try to shut down the feeling of loving kindness because it feels like a vulnerability. It feels like an exposure, like our soft spot is open and someone could shoot an arrow at it or something. In fact, as the Buddhist, and actually all the Eastern traditions, especially the martial arts traditions teach, that is when we are at our strongest, right? The martial arts will teach the people to fight and be warriors, so they never fight. So no one ever even messes with them. So no one even lifts a finger, right? And we cultivate that strength, not in a fighting way, but in a radiant way, by doing these practices. So as we do the quick Tonglen practice, we're going to use our breath to help dissolve this self-protection and to tune into and really get the feeling of our own suffering so that we transmute it. There's a great story of this guy, Davidson, I think his last name was. He was at Unity of Houston for 8 years or something. He's the one who built that big pyramid there. And he really got into this and got into the transmutation and was teaching courses in all this transmutation stuff at Unity. Brilliant stuff. And he said the only thing it compared to that was more potent as he understood it was Tonglen. He was really into this stuff. We should look him up someday. He's super fun. But anyway, I geek out on this stuff. Okay, so Tonglen practice can be done for oneself. It could be done for a gazillion people. It can be done for the entire universe. It can be done for someone who is alive, someone who's dead, for a person, for an animal, for a plant, for a concept, for an idea, anything. And it can be done anytime. We can sit and do it as a special meditation, and we can do it on the go. There's a teacher who tells this beautiful story of a really precocious 3-year-old, who said, look, I see the suffering in the world. There should be something I can do about it. A 3-year-old. And so the Lama said, well, let's try this. I'm going to give you the pith, which is a sort of a Buddhist term for like the crux of something. I'm going to give you the pith teaching of Tonglen. When you see, little 3-year-old, when you see or feel something that strikes you as suffering, right? An animal being hurt or children being picked on or something like that, breathe that suffering into your heart. Just breathe it in with the desire and the longing that that suffering be relieved. It's a crucial piece. I'm not just taking it in for the fun of it. I'm doing it as the longing for it to be relieved. And as I breathe it in, there's a powerful light. It's a visualization here, and it's a vajra, which is this specific sort of thing. But it makes it not ours even that we're bringing it into. So as this suffering hits the vajra, this powerful light, there's this bolt of lightning that comes through and instantly and completely transmute that suffering into divine love. and light and healing and beauty, and spreads it all out through the universe right then and there. So then you just breathe that out. So she gave this to the 3-year-old, who came back 6 weeks later and said, I feel great. This is really helpful, and I see it changing things for other people. So I find it a wonderful practice to do. And the interesting thing, because there's still that resistance to let me bring something in that feels like suffering or pain, right? Why would I want that? But here's the crux for me, is we're actually feeling it already. If I weren't already aware of the pain, I wouldn't even be thinking to do it, right? So if there's something that is disturbing my peace already, why not name it? Why not look at it? And why not transmute it? So that's just a thought. So Tonglen, it helps our hearts not to be contracted the way they normally get. It helps the band around the heart actually to snap. Some forms of Tonglen will actually visualize that happening. And it also helps the heart then expand to the point where we are fully awake. And all the hardness is gone, and all the shutting down against our life experience and against our connection with others just stops. And then we're free. So like I said, we're going to do a mini Tonglen. Normally, the practice would be to do the loving kindness meditation first and then go into Tonglen, because we're cultivating, well, it doesn't matter why. But we're not going to do it that way. I don't want to end with the Tonglen. I want to go to that deeper place and then end with spreading the light and magnificence out to the universe. Sound good? Okay, so this is our meditation time. And I'll be talking us through this. So as we go into Tonglen, we're going to practice, like I said, just with something that you are experiencing yourself. We're not bringing anything in from anywhere else. But we are going to work with whatever is going on for you for the benefit of yourself and the millions of others who are experiencing the very same thing this very moment. We're going to work with the breath, and we're going to experience different textures of breath. We're going to work with heat and density. So as we get ready, just rest in the stillness and take slow, open, relaxed breaths, spacious breaths. And with the next breath, just breathe in a texture of something a little heavy, some density. And as you exhale, feel the light and the expansiveness go out. With the next breath in, raise up anything that's concerning you, anything that's bothering you. It could be a pain, a fear, an idea, something in your body or life, something in the world. And breathe that in with a dense, heavy, damp texture to it. And with the exhale, it's light again. Each time we're breathing in the density, breathing out the light, breathing in the heaviness, bringing out the healing, breathing in the pain we are already experiencing, and breathing out the light and the connection for all who may be experiencing it anywhere in the universe. Tune in with that next inhale to all the people who may be experiencing this pain. Feel the lightness as you exhale run through your body. Experience the inhale and the exhale with the breath and also with every pore in your body. In the dense, thick darkness. Out with the energy circling the globe, the light. Breathing in the heaviness, we're almost done. Just sit with it, know it, it transmutes. And out with peace. A last big inhale, knowing that this is relief for all. Feeling your heart growing bigger and bigger as you bring that in, connect with all, and exhale. Feeling your heart almost bursting with love. Complete whatever may be cycling for you, whatever still wants to be completed. And bring the breath back to normal. Might actually have been a little bit too fast, but hopefully you got a taste. We'll transition now into the loving kindness meditation. We're going to go through this multiple times, once for ourselves, once for someone we love, once for someone with whom we're completely neutral. Maybe it's the post person or the person at the cafe or something. Someone who's challenging to us. All of these beings together and all beings everywhere. So I'm going to read the statements, and you can repeat it after me for yourself. So the first one is for yourself. So we will say, may I be peaceful, happy, light in body and spirit. So all repeating, may I be peaceful, happy, light in body and spirit. May I be safe and free from injury. May I be safe and free from injury. May I be free from anger, affliction, and anxiety. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. May I nourish the seeds of joy and happiness in myself every day. Deep breath. Now bring to your mind's eye, to your heart, someone you love, someone you care deeply about, or an animal, or plant. And with that in your heart and mind, we'll use she this time round. May she be peaceful, happy, light in body and spirit. May she be safe and free from injury. May she be free from anger, afflictions, and anxiety. May she look at herself with eyes of love. May she nourish the seeds of joy and happiness in herself. And bring to mind now someone neutral or something neutral. We'll use he this time, and you can use whatever name you want. May he be peaceful, happy, and light. May he be safe from injury. May he be free from anger, afflictions, and anxiety. May he learn to look at himself with eyes of love. May he nourish the seeds of joy in himself. Now bring to mind someone who's a little challenging. I'm going to suggest not the most challenging person in your life or in the world. Don't go where I know you're thinking about going or not going. Pick something fairly, just a little challenging. But do check if your heart stays open or if you're feeling it wanting to close. So with this challenging person in mind or challenging being in mind, may they be peaceful, happy, and light. May they be safe and free from injury. May they learn to look at themselves with the eyes of love. May they nourish the seeds of joy in themselves. We're going to put these last two together and bring those beings we've just worked with in one unit and extending it to all beings everywhere. Bringing them to heart and mind. May we be peaceful, happy, and light. May we be safe and free from injury. May we be free from anger, affliction, and anxiety. May we look at ourselves with eyes of love. May we nourish the seeds of joy and happiness in ourselves. With a few deep breaths, bringing this loving kindness back into your own heart and into the circle of those of us here on our Zoom call today. Bringing your consciousness, your attention back to the room. Staying aware of what sensations you may have experienced, what you might have noticed with your heart opening, closing, fluttering, or the differences in sensation among the people with whom you worked or beings with whom you worked. I want to close with just one thing. I know this has been long and I appreciate it. I hope you've had a good experience with this. Thich Nhat Hanh says just one line of the metta or the loving kindness meditation will bring more love and healing to the entire world. So even if we don't do the entire exercise, if we just say one little bit, we're putting a drop in that will ripple out. And my very, very last, Pema Chodron says something so beautiful. She writes that a teacher once told me that if I wanted lasting happiness, the only way to get it was to step out of my cocoon. When I asked her how to bring happiness to others, she said, same instructions. This is the reason, Pema writes, that I work with these aspiration practices. The best way to serve ourselves is to love and care for ourselves and others. These are powerful tools for dissolving the barriers that perpetuate not just our own unhappiness, but the suffering of all beings. So with that, may all beings on our call be happy, know happiness in the root of happiness. And so it is. Thank you.
Kathrine, thank you for that radiant, enlightened, empowering message. And I offer now Sibelius's Finlandia as a compliment to them.
Oh, Barbara, how wonderful. Thank you for your choices of music, for sharing your heartfelt talent and connection to all of us. Wow, wow, just magnificent. Thank you. And Kathrine, in the beginning of the service, I mentioned I consider you a lady who works from her heart, and you certainly did today. I love the fact that truth is truth, and how here in our church, one of the things I cherish is that we're able to embrace other faiths and take the truth from that, and as you so magnificently did today, join it with our unity beliefs and see, hey, all around the world, we have so much more to learn from each other and things that we share already. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, I've been touched to the heart on many levels today, Barbara and Kathrine, and of course, all the wonderful faces of our community here today. Thank you all. It was very, very special, and I am so grateful. Thank you. And now please join me in a closing prayer. And now, as we face the week ahead, we center our thoughts on God. We will remember the wisdom that came to our hearts and minds today. We will continue to listen for the still, small voice of Spirit in all our doings. We will trust the guidance we receive and take action to do what is right. We are grateful to be blessed with clarity and freedom from fear. We now move forward with confidence and strength, allowing the driving presence within to guide us. We open our hearts and minds to the new ideas and ways of perceiving as divine light illuminates our paths. We are so grateful, and so it is. Amen and amen.